Good morning, at least here in the Eastern time zone of the U.S., it's morning. Welcome to another episode of Relaxing Painting with Dyson Dungeons. Dyson Dungeons is all about Dungeons and Dragons, except for this stream, which is sometimes about Dungeons and Dragons, if I'm painting some minifigs or some dungeon tiles, but otherwise it's about building models because my DM said, well, you have to do this stream, so you might as well build models if you don't have anything better to do. So that's what's happening here. And I'm continuing to work on the Savoia S.21. This is Porco Rosso's plane. The model comes complete with a minifig of Porco Rosso, which one of these days I actually need to start painting. Maybe today, probably not. Between Wednesday and this morning, I did some spray painting. You can see I put a whole lot of red paint on a piece of cardboard. And that's what happens when you spray paint. It's like half of the paint, maybe not even that much, actually goes onto what you're trying to paint. Whether you're using sometimes an airbrush is better because you can get closer and apply it more carefully to the surface that you want painted, but I can't use an airbrush because I have no skills to do it. I just make a huge, humongous mess. There aren't enough adjectives in any language combined to describe the mess that I make with an airbrush. I suppose I keep thinking, well, yeah, I could try it again. We bought a much better airbrush than the one I used to use. Nicole has used it sometimes. Anyway, it's possible, but unlikely. So I use paint in a spray can, which is wasteful and expensive. I'd recommend that if you can possibly figure out how to use an airbrush, that you do that. Hi, Grizzly. The Malefic Viper, yes. I think I have a model of one of those, actually. I've got a model of practically everything sitting over there on shelves, and even some over there that I just haven't, anyway, probably will never get around to building. Some of them are really pretty cool. But back to this. So I did some spray painting. I had a brilliant idea, right? Just this really brilliant idea about how to hold this, for example, and spray it on both sides, and it was a disaster. The spray paint is actually quite liquid, and it just dripped. And then I had to clean it all off and start over. So there's a lot more paint on here than I thought there should be. And then weird stuff is happening. Like there's at least 3 coats of red paint on this already. And you can see that there's these areas here. They're symmetric. They're not paint flaws. There's something in the plastic itself. Okay, well, that makes sense that you would become, harmful toxins. And it makes sense to be a malefic viper because vipers are, I think 100% of vipers are toxic. But I've got these changes in gloss that are on both sides. So I'm pretty sure that that's something that has to do with the plastic itself. And this has been primed and painted with 3 coats of red paint, and it still doesn't, it still happens. So I'm not sure what to do about that. I think with this, since it's just red, and I still have some red paint left in the can, if not, I'll splurge for another one. is I can try a couple of things with this. One is I can give it a light sanding, just kind of a buff, to take the gloss out and repaint it a couple of times, or I could just spray more paint on it. But like I said, there's already at least 2, maybe 3 coats on here, and whatever it is that's causing that is still there. And it's on both sides. Okay, here is one side of it. You can see it's kind of a triangle shaped area. It's on both sides, so it's like in the plastic itself that isn't covered over. So one thing, but I think I might try, there'll just be a lot of buildup of paint on this, but there isn't a lot of detail, and it's incised pretty deeply. I think I'm going to give it a coat of primer, just reprime it, and then try it again. I can try it on this piece because there's no striping or anything on it. It's just going to be red. It's weird on the screen, and I think on your screens as well, it shows up as orange. But this is actually a very deep red. So I'm really not happy with how this turned out, and I don't know what the problem is. I can't feel anything. Okay, when I run, I can't feel any difference in texture. It's not from sanding. Because the only sanding I did on this was around right around the edges to get some of the sprue marks off. And the symmetry of it is just baffling to me. So I think I'll play around with this over the weekend and see if I can make it look better. It's certainly not going to look any worse. At worst, it'll just end up looking the way it is. Then I've got all these other parts that got painted. The wings were masked because there's stripes going on here, so I'll unmask these today. The white turned out okay. It's not great. Again, there's multiple coats on here. I think it'll be all right. I've got the fuselage that needs to be unmasked. And then I've got the parts of the vertical stabilizer that need to be striped. There's a fair amount, like a lot of work to be done on this. This one's easy. This whole thing, there's just this point right there. Just the bit that goes over the top of this. The white's in the middle. Oh my, that doesn't match. Okay, so there's a white stripe that goes up the center of this. Here. And catches the tip of that, but the tip of that is still kind of reddish. I need to put another coat of white paint on this. So there it is. And there's a black spot. Why is there a black spot there? It is a little raised. There's nothing there. So this needs, at least the tip of it, needs some more white paint on it. There's always something. And then this is the fuselage. And the unmasking here is going to reveal how much paint got into the inside of it that would require a bunch of touching up. So I'll get around to that. But understand what that is. There's a little bump there. Well, if I'm going to be painting it white again, I guess I'll need to take care of that. Divot. I have to sand that out. When it's painted red, it'll still show. I mean, it won't show as a black divot like that. A little. Hi, Aman. Thanks for joining in. I'm just taking a look at the results of my painting, and so far it's not great. That's all I can say. But there's a mystery thing here. There's a mystery thing going on right in the center of the rudder. It's pretty annoying. There's just a spot here that it's like a hole in the paint. It's like maybe there was a bubble or something that burst. I don't know. Or maybe there was a piece of lint or debris or something that got on there, and when it came off, it left a divot. I'm gonna sand that down. I have to repaint this anyway. Because the white paint on this has to match the white paint on this, because the vertical stripe goes right here, and you can see pretty clearly that isn't the case. So I have to put more white paint on this in any event. So I might as well try to fix this. Today, I'm going to talk about what I need to redo, which is this thing, the rudder. Ask the wings and see how that is, but I'm not going to be doing much more on those wings today. But this needs to be repainted. These bits, these are hatches, little hatches that go over the engine, and the spot right there where you load the machine guns. I painted those red. They came out okay. The insides of these need to be painted metallic. So I'm gonna do that today. I'll do that as painting with brush painting. Inside of this as well. The edges like this are good. I'm thinking though that I want to put red paint on these edges. So when it comes off the cover, it'll be that way. I'm going to do that sooner than later. And then the inside of this, who knows? Who knows what I'm going to find in there. So I spent a lot of time waiting for paint to dry. Yeah, that would be, from a D&D perspective, it would be unusual. Keep my glasses off in order to see up close, and then I put them in places where they're either in the way or I lose them. So I could try to paint that edge red. I think I'm going to do that after I put the metallic on. Is that something that you need to spend points on later to get your animated doll moving, or is it just a matter of development in the game? The rest of this came out pretty nicely. But I need to paint the metallic on there, on the inside of it, because this is made out of metal, and it's these edges here that I think would look best if they were red. And it would make it easier to paint up to the edge then too, rather than over that and get paint on the outside. If I get a little bit of paint, metallic paint on the edge, I can either wipe it off or sand it down and retouch it. So that's something I think I'm going to do. The edges on this came out fine. I think I should paint the red on there first before I do anything else, because it has to dry before I can paint the metallic. So I guess I'll just do that. To use the spray paint for that. So the way I've done that, you can see it here, is I spray some into the corner of this little container thing and then dip the brush in. I think that'll work okay. I'll use this little brush. Maybe not. Maybe. No, that one won't work. I'll use this little brush. I'm being hesitant about doing anything today. It's just this feeling of dread about what could go wrong. Because this feels like a something's going to go wrong day. And here I am. I don't even have an oops button to work with. There, I almost, yeah. "30 points later." Okay, you do have some way to go, don't you? No, it's saying I need to repaint this. I'm going to start with a primer and just redo the whole thing and see if it goes away, the inconsistency of the texture. If it goes away, that's great. If it doesn't, then I'm no worse off, other than the amount of time it took. This turned out not too bad, except there it does show. Damn it. Okay, I can't unmask this. I dropped this thing. Can you believe it? It was painted. I was trying to check it to see how it looked, okay, to see if there was, places that were missed or something. And I dropped it right on the floor. Poof, bang, bad. And then picked it up, and my fingerprint got there. And I thought I had successfully covered it, but I didn't. So I'm going to give this a light sanding. And since I'm going to have the red spray paint out anyway, I'm going to just spray that bit. Part there where some dirt got on it. Almost. I had this so close. Talk about your oopses, right? That was like, I can't believe I did that. And there was no way to pick it up without doing what I did. I suppose that's probably not true. There probably was a way to pick it up without doing what I did. But I didn't. I just got upset and picked it up. It is what it is. Like, she becomes pretty powerful as more points are accumulated. You were talking about, okay. You have to get the ability first, of course. Sorry, I'm being quiet here as I'm trying to sand out my fingerprint. When I looked at this last night, I didn't see it, but I didn't have the really good light on. What can I say? You know, it's not a how-to show, and dropping things that you've painted that are actually really pretty, they're looking good, right? Dropping them onto a concrete floor, at least it didn't break, right? I can say that. And then picking it up and getting your fingerprint on the wet paint, those are things I would recommend against. Okay, just a suggestion that if you're doing modeling, that you don't do those things. Just don't drop things. Don't pick them up. Don't get your fingerprints in the wet paint. Make a mess of something that's looking okay. Is that not disappearing? More examples of, I'm just giving you more and more examples of learning how to by learning what not to. Okay, that's the story I'm saying, is that sometimes I will on this stream show you how to do something by doing something you shouldn't do. You can save yourself a lot of trouble by just by not doing the things I did. This is supposed to work. Okay? I mean, it is supposed to, by sanding out and making the surface smooth again, respraying it, it's supposed to work. That is probably some dirt from the floor. I'm really surprised that that this whole thing just didn't get covered in cement floor dust and stuff. I'm actually pretty surprised at that. I wasn't expecting to be spending a lot of time. That sounds like a really good plan. I think that would work, right? So how long do you think you need to play before do you earn like 1 point every session or 2 points every session? Or I suppose it depends on what happens in the session. I'm just wondering how long it will take, in terms of number of sessions that you play to get those abilities. Okay, so you did use one of them. You were talking about maybe using them. Okay, I'm not sure I can do much more with this. Try to get that tape back on. I'm going to give this just a real quick spray here. Sanded that hopefully make the fingerprint disappear. It could be totally going away. Yeah, if you don't do anything else with it, then you should. That's cool. I thought I got away with this, but I didn't. Oh, nothing for it but to do it and see what happens. Yeah, I did that, and hopefully it will look better than it did before, and certainly no worse. Right. Um, yeah, that's right. She's holding on to that. Does it take concentration to hold her human disguise? Is that something she needs to concentrate on, or is that just sort of automatic now? Okay. I'm going to paint these edges red. At least that's the plan. Let's see how this goes. So far, it's not a disaster. That's always a good thing. some of the red paint got into the inside there, but that will be covered by metallic. Okay. So you take an action, so you don't have to keep concentration. It's just done once the action is taken. That's good. Otherwise, you'd be really hampered in what you're able to do otherwise, right? Probably significantly hampered if you had to keep focus on that the entire time. Or concentration, I should say. Well, let me review what it is that oh my, there's a lot of paint in that brush. As I'm using I'm using some isopropyl alcohol to clean this brush, and as I'm squeezing the base of it, look, there's all sorts of residue there at the bottom. There, I don't know what that's called, where the bristles are attached. So does she need to maintain her human appearance like during combat, like during the last session? Or does she drop her human appearance during that time? If I dare do this, I hope. I'm just always concerned about, doing one thing and making a mess about something else. I want to paint the inside of this metallic, right? But to hold it, hopefully that the sticky tack will not mess up. It's not going to work. It leaves a residue and it affects the gloss of the paint. To myself here as I'm trying to figure out how to do this. I think, why do I have fuzz? Oh, man. This is going to be a day. It just is. Okay. I'm gonna make a holder. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get a piece of cardboard that I can hold on to. Maybe like just a piece across, and then I'll use tape to hold that on the cardboard. Oh, okay. So that's, yeah, you don't want to be switching back and forth if it costs that much. I need a different pair of scissors than the one I've got here. I actually found these right away. That's kind of a surprise. Cardboard magic. I don't want it to be too big. That'll work. Okay, I'm just waiting for the red paint to dry on that one. While I'm doing that, just to remind everybody, um, okay, so once you get something, adding an aspect to an ability is upgrading, basically. So I did a bunch of spray painting. I had a disaster on the wings because I did it vertically and the paint dripped, and I had to sand it all off and start over. This I need to paint some more. This turned out actually okay, but the white stripe goes up the center, and you can see that this is not as white as that is white. So I need to put more white paint on here, at least on the tip of this. And I don't know. Yeah, I scarred it up a little bit. So there's going to be like 1 or 2 coats of white paint yet on this that I need to do over the weekend. I've got one piece that's done after everything I did. This is weird. There's this weird textural stuff going on. I'm going to reprime and repaint this. Why not? And I'm going to unmask the wings now, and who knows? Who knows how this is going to look? Maybe it'll be okay. What can go wrong taking tape off? So what will happen with this? Well, I'll explain it after I get this off. Why is there tape there? Who knows? Well, the paper did its job. The paper kept the paint off the rest of this. Yay. Now that it is trash. This is the real test. This is the did this masking work, or do I have a ragged edge? I wouldn't be surprised if I have a ragged edge because of, I had to remove the paint and redo the paint, and it's that. But after I get this off, then I'll show you what is supposed to be happening in terms of striping on this. Really happening. What I've got here is the trailing edge of this wing is actually separating if I put any kind of pressure on it. So I need to be more cautious. Yeah, there's a little bit of leakage around these little indentations there. I'm going to have to be very careful about where I put the tape and how I tape it when I paint the green stripes. For the most part, I say that came out okay. Okay, that came out all right. So let me put this aside. The trash. I should throw it in the trash, but then I'll be off camera again while I do that. That would be pretty significant. wouldn't it? To if you change your appearance and you also change your abilities at the same time, that would be a pretty massive event. I would think that would wait until much later in the game, if at all. But it'd be pretty cool, I guess, if you could do that. Let's show you the instructions here. The wing tips and the vertical stabilizer and rudder. Yeah, I think that would make sense, is to keep it consistent like that. Is that you have a disguise and you use it occasionally when you need to. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. But you could be very overpowered if you could just become something else. That would, well, kind of like druidic, right? When you become an animal, you change into an animal and you take on the characteristics of that animal. I'm not sure it would be consistent with the way you've described your character, though. This isn't in color, but the way this is supposed to work is that right here on the edge of the ailerons, okay, right there, it's a little extra white there, is this gray color is red. So this whole wing basically gets painted red, except for here and here. And this stays white. It's this section here, the center of this white area, the center of it will stay white. The wingtip and all of the interior between the wingtips is painted red. That will be the next step. Okay. I'll be masking it off here and here and covering this area so that it stays white. And then the red goes here, here, and here. And then when I take the tape off, if I have a nice clean line, there'll be a red tip, a white area, and a red center area on both sides, the top and the bottom. And when all of that dries, assuming it goes okay, I'll be taping off the red, which was just painted, and the white, okay, leaving the center part white. Then there'll be a strip of white here like that. And that is what will be painted green, this color. Something similar on the tail, okay. This bit here is almost all red except for this tiny tip up here, right there, which is white and is contiguous with the rest of this, right? I really don't know what I was thinking, okay? Because these stripes, this is contiguous with that, and the stripes need to match up, is I really don't know why I didn't attach this to that to begin with, and then I would have had a uniform color because they would have been painted together. Now I remember why I can't. That's what I wanted to do, but then I can't, because once this is attached to that, then I can't get the horizontal stabilizer in that slot. So I need to do them separately and hope it all lines up. No, I don't. Okay. This, I can attach this with like rubber cement. All right. So that when I paint it, when I finally get this white enough and I paint this whole thing, I can make sure that the stripe lines up beautifully. And then I can just take this off, get rid of the rubber cement, and reassemble it. Now I think of that. After I've got this a different color than that. Okay, well, this is going to take some manipulating. I don't care too much about the part back here. Okay, that's going to be red right on up to that line. But this white needs to match that white. That's the only critical part of the whole thing, is that this white matches that white and they don't. And then the next critical thing is that the stripe be consistent up here like that. Okay. And I can do that by rubber cementing this on, which will just be temporary, and I can then take it apart after it's painted. But I need to get this to look like that first, which it doesn't. Great. I'm not going to be taping the rest of this today. It's just not that kind of a day. But I just wanted to explain what I was doing and why. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is right. When she finds out that she isn't a human when she thought she was a human. Okay. The doll queen, she might adopt others. Sorry for being a little bit raggedy. That's not an unusual thing, is it? But hopefully the paint that I painted on that, the redo that I did, a redo on the fuselage, hopefully that will look okay and I can unmask it and work on the touch-up on the inside. Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out what I'm doing here. Oh, the eye color of the queen. She has doesn't the queen have flashlight eyes? I think that's something that you said that she can do. I was looking for something that was right in front of me. Okay. Oh, okay. I had the two confused. Oh, I see what you're saying. Never mind. Now I understand. I'm just putting some tape on here to hold this piece down, to paint it white again, to remind myself to paint it white again. It's pretty impressive that almost everything I did yesterday in terms of painting hasn't turned out. It was like 50%, which goes to show that not only am I not good at airbrushing, but apparently I'm not that terribly good at spray can use either. What I'm going to attempt to do is paint the inside of this duraluminum, as it says on the bottle, which is the color of the inside of the metal framework on the inside of the plane, wherever there is like the metal enclosure for the engine, for which this is a cover. This is a hatch that goes over the top of the loading area for the machine guns. And it makes sense that a hatch like this, which is fairly thin, would actually have been made out of metal and not wood, because there's no framing on it that would say that it's made out of wood. So I'm assuming it's metal. So that's why I'm painting it metallic. And the thing I'm going to attempt to do is paint it metallic without getting the metallic paint on the red, because that would miss the point of having made it red. For 5. There it is. This stuff flows. Okay, I'm going to have to make sure that I hold it like this. Okay, so you've already developed so much. The purple, yeah, controls her minion, which is the thing that has the flashlight eyes, and your spider. And so she's using her strings to gather information she can't see. That's interesting. That's an interesting aspect of it. Sorry for going quiet. Just while I was stirring paint, you would think I'd be able to do that and talk at the same time. You would think that, but you would be wrong. Well, I think this is a pretty low risk thing to do. If I get this metallic paint on the edges, I can try to wipe it off right away. I use a towel when I open these metallics, because you can see there is this tendency for them to spatter, which it just did. That's how I get paint on places where I don't know I got paint on places. Let's all see together. It's been not awful. Here, you can just barely see it, is that the red didn't quite go down all the way there, and the metallic doesn't quite go up over it. So there's kind of a boundary area there that's neither red nor metallic. But I'm going to leave it alone, because sometimes trying too hard. How many times have you seen that on this stream? You know, that one little bit of, oh, let's just try this, turns into, that was a really bad idea. That happens quite often. And I would just as soon not have that happen now. So it's going to stay that way. Here's a little different story. I do need to paint this bit here. Hatch closes over. You can't really see it. There's a notch there, an indentation. And I want the metallic in there. Dense concentration. If I looked at this through my head magnifier, I would be quite unhappy with the result. Bit of paint there. Sometimes I can just clean it off like this. I can just use a toothpick and just rub it off before it dries. Do this. I don't know if this is a good idea. Probably not. Okay, I can be satisfied with how this turned out. You might want to put another coat of metallic on this. It looks wavy. I don't know why it looks like that. I think the metal particles aren't well mixed. Not paying attention there at the moment because I'm just trying to. I mean, it doesn't look like delicate work, and it's really not. But I can tell you that because of the way things are going today, could be in for all sorts of entertainment. There's all sorts of oofses. Ah, I see. Well, yeah. So you're doing sensing with the strings, but you could also use your minions to communicate information about what's going on. Okay, that'll do. It's clean. That's not clean. I'm going to take this off, maybe. Put this on. Paint the inside of this. Toothpicks are not a very expensive kind of thing. I'm going to use a toothpick to keep this stirred up rather than mess around with my brush. Yeah, I think that would work better. Is that the DM will probably like to keep her abilities kind of stable, at least for a while, until everybody gets used to everybody and they're playing their characters. And then it might make sense just sort of organically within the development of the role play that there would be, even the other players might understand why there's the development of additional abilities. Too much all at once can be disorienting in the game and difficult for the DM too. Okay. By the way, I'm going to do this new thing that I didn't even tell you I had. The DM isn't going to be happy about that. You also don't want your characters to become too overpowered, because that's a real challenge for the DM too, is to try to keep things like combat interesting. You know, if one character becomes too overpowered, then the balance of the group gets thrown off. So you need to throw something really difficult at the overpowered character, but then that overwhelms the rest of the players' characters. That makes it not that much fun. But then, you want the game to become more and more challenging. So that's why level ups happen. So you don't end up spending months and months just fighting gnomes, right? Or gnolls. I guess it's gnolls that you end up fighting usually. I have to touch this up again a little bit later. Need this. And you're playing what, every 2 weeks? I guess that makes sense to do that. I need to touch that up with red now. The back and forth of trying to get these boundary lines just right. painting skill is not online today. See the issues without my head magnifiers, you know that they're real. Well, I think like this time around, after the first session, you're going to use one of your 2 points to get something. And that makes sense. Why not use them when you've got them? But then, saving up for something significant later, that makes a lot of sense. If you go with immediate gratification, then you miss out on some of the more significant opportunities that lay down the line. Today, just as a heads up, I'm going to be taking a short break around 11:30. I hope it's a short break. There's something I need to do right about that time. So I will do it and then get back to this. Whatever this is coming along. Yeah. Metallic isn't liking. I should have sanded that down a little bit. The metallic doesn't like sticking to the glossy red, except here on the top. Okay. Where I don't want it to be sticking to the glossy red, there it is, sticking to the glossy red. Get to go in the other direction. This is supposed to be like a really simple thing that I'm doing here. Just painting up to a raised edge, 90-degree angle edge. Just paint right up to it. Shouldn't be a problem. Paint shouldn't go anywhere other than on the surface I'm painting and not around the corner. But that's not how it's working today. And it's not awful, but I've got, there's just enough here and here. It's just unfortunate that I'm not getting these edges the way I want them. Okay. I'm going to use a little bigger brush to fill this in and then come back and work on edges. Mm-hmm. Here's a brush. Okay, I want to use that brush. Yeah, I'll use this brush. It has enough paint on it to do it like 4 times over. What are your summons abilities so far? It's dry. I need to do a little touching up on the edges yet with the through aluminium paint, and then I need to touch up the red. I think when it's dried, I'll be able to sand down the metallic a little bit. Okay, so the animation of the dowel with the light up eyes is, oh, what's up with that? Always rotate. This is a how-to hint. Always rotate your model, because you'll find that you might have missed a spot, and it's very disappointing when you don't notice it until much later. Then it becomes a problem sometimes. You need to let that dry. That's going to take maybe another. It dries pretty fast. These metallics usually. Remind me again, what is it that you purchased with your first point? I'm sorry. I know we talked about that on Wednesday, and it made a lot of sense. But you can remind us all of what you spent your first point on. Paint dry here. Pretty exciting feature of this stream. Right, improved trip. That just made a whole lot of sense, especially with the strings. That you can use that for crowd control, and that improved trip makes it. Yeah, I mean, using it just fits your character better. You're absolutely right. From an outside perspective, it just seems to fit better that your character would be doing crowd control with the strings rather than trying to do damage with them. All right. Well, so far I've accomplished practically nothing other than to talk about what I need to redo. What I need to redo on. I talked about how I failed at my spray painting, and I did. Just this is one of those. I shouldn't do this. This is definitely one of those I shouldn't do this, but I'm going to anyway. The metallic right here. I didn't mess it up. I need to re-clean the brush. But there was just a little bit there where the metallic didn't cover the red as much as I wanted it to. It's going to be around the edges here today. Just getting the red where I want the silver where I want the red. This is a whiny day. I'm going to be a whiner today. Okay. So that's going to be the next unlock. How many points does that take? All right. About 10 minutes here. Just to recap, this didn't get painted to match the thing it needs to match, especially on the point where it needs to match. So I'm going to repaint it white. I see. This has weird textural issues, so I'm going to reprime it and repaint it and just see if it gets better or not. This needs to be very carefully masked so I can cover up what will be white and green so that I can paint the red wingtips in the center. I'm going to not do the taping until Monday and then do the painting later. I need to paint the desert yellow color on the pontoons here. And I'll probably work on that after break. And then I had to redo part of the upper fuselage because I dropped it on the floor and got a fingerprint of paint, and I thought I had fixed it, and I didn't. So I sanded it down and repainted it, and after break, I'm not going to look at it before break. I'll just get upset because of how it's looking. I'll look at it after break, and if it's okay, I'll unmask that and do the interior touch-up as necessary. So I'm not going to be accomplishing a huge amount of stuff today, but it's coming along. So there's some spots here that just need some additional metallic. I'm going to paint these on, do the touch-up of the metallic before I do the touch-up of the red, because the metallic touch-up could very well put more metallic on the red. Which it did in a very, very minor way. But that looks better now. There's just a few little spots where the red lapped over to the bottom, and it's showing through. It's showing through this metallic color. Coating it. I'm not putting my head magnifier on for this because it's too distressing to see how it's going. But if it looks okay to me without the head magnifier, it'll probably look okay if I follow my own advice about display, which is don't let anyone get any closer than 18 inches and keep your lighting dim. Things look a lot better that way than if you get up like with a magnifying glass under bright lights. So it's a little discolored there, but that would be checking it, doing the rotating the work kind of thing. Yeah, that's not altogether bad. This is an engine cover, so you would expect that maybe there'd be some darker spots and some lighter spots. Circles there, but I can't do anything about those. So those we'll just have to pretend that those were intentional. I'm not going to go on my why are there circles rant. I'll just not do that now. Like, why is there a bubble there? Come on, not right in a really, really bad spot. There, okay. Okay, so there's just some, where I painted it red up here. I got some metallic paint on it. These edges look all right. So I think, I'll fix the red after the break. I've got one piece done, the hatch for the cover that goes over the machine gun loading area. I just need to do some red touching up, but I want to wait until after the break because I need to be a little bit focused. I don't want to get the red paint onto the silver again. And there's actually a little bit of a chance that I could like sand off the metallic and it'll be red underneath. Probably not, but it's worth the effort, worth the try. So after the break, I'm going to finish the tiny little bits of touch up. And here you can see where I got the metallic, where it's just over the edge. Okay. So I need to just very, very carefully take care of that without getting it back onto the metallic on the inside. I do that after the break. And the other thing I'm going to do after the break is check on the fuselage. The paint should be dry by then to see whether I managed to fix the fingerprint issue or not. I hope I did, at least in a satisfactory way. And if I did, then I'm going to unmask that and do the touching up on the top of the fuselage. And if there's any time left at all, I'm going to start painting the floats. And that's going to be a little bit of a challenge to get the yellow, the desert tan yellow, right along that edge. Just have a really, really clean edge. And then somehow or other mask it in a way that I can spray paint over it with the red. So these floats they came with decals, but the decals just look like decals. And it's just like with the stripes, I think it'll look better if I paint it. So yeah, I need to take a break now. I will be back, I hope, in about 15 minutes. Usually I don't take a break during this abbreviated stream, but I just need to do that. So plan on about 15 minutes. Hopefully it won't be terribly much longer than that. See you in a bit. Oh, it came back. Okay, I haven't used that break button in forever. I mean, months and months and months, and wasn't really quite sure if it was going to work or not. So what I'm going to do now is attempt to get rid of the little bits of silver that got over the edge. And I'm going to try to sand it off if I can. And if I can't, then I will attempt to touch it up with the red paint without getting the red paint back onto the metallic paint. This should all not work. Thanks for putting up with this. That actually seemed to work. Anyway, I've got two little spots that need red paint, but they're both in places that are fairly easy to get to. It's a success, or a success enough anyway. Hate to mess up the brush using this, but to use a brush. Great. Failure at everything today. Now I've got 100 times more paint than I need because I didn't get it right. That's the sound du jour. What I'm doing now is once again doing something that I shouldn't bother doing because it has just as much chance of being fail as it has of fixing the issue. You'd say, if you've done this over and over, I think it's going to be different this time. And the answer to that is, I really don't think it's going to be different this time. I think it'll mess things up, but it's now as good as it's going to get, and it's actually pretty good. Yeah, I need to clean the brush. Then I'm going to go check on the fuselage, and hopefully it's adequate. I really don't want to keep messing with it because, again, it's one of those things, keep messing with it and it just gets worse. And I'm tired of, I'm not tired, I'm tired today. Well, there is that. Not as tired as I was on Monday after just getting back and being jet lagged. I was really tired, really, really tired. On yeah, 2 pieces done. Look at that, done. I should put these in the done box In fact, I think I will, because then I can show you that there is, in fact, things that are done that I put in the done box. I might even do that now. I think what I will do is I'm going to get the done box so that I can show you that I have done some things and celebrate their success before going on to the fuselage, where I have trepidation. That's a good word. I have trepidation about what I'm going to find in terms of fixing that fingerprint and in terms of the leakage on the inside. So here, I'm getting that. This is the done box. In fact, I'm going to do this. Labeled now. Can't even do that right. I really needed to have a better felt tip pen. The cover back on this brush. Just a little bit of an effort to not end up with a big problem. This is the brush I was going to use, okay, on the floats. So this is the done box. This is the box of parts that are finished. They are done. All right. Great. Fold down and stay down. So the done box actually has some pretty cool stuff in it. I've got the engine, okay, and the engine compartment. And this has turned out to be, it turned out okay. Okay. There's a fair amount of detail on this, and I decided that I would leave this cover uncemented. It's a repair access thing, so you can open it up. And if you open it up, then you can see the detail of whatever it is, the carburetors or something back there, which you can't see if this is cemented on. The valve covers, the exhaust. On the exhaust, I even put a little bit of blue paint. You can see it actually, to simulate the heating of the exhaust pipes. And the little radiators came out pretty well. You can barely see the seams. In fact, that came out all right. And in the back here, there was a seam right down the middle of that I managed to get rid of, I'd say, pretty successfully. This was a painting disaster as well. The inside of this is painted. You can sort of see it. Painted duraluminum, because it's made out of metal. And I got it on the outside, and I thought, well, I'm painting red paint over that. That'll be fine. But the red paint was translucent. So I actually ended up having to just strip this whole thing pretty much and start over. So it was another one of those, but it's done. It's in the done box because it's done. This sits on top of the wing, way up on top here. And there's actually a propeller that goes here, a spinner. This is the first thing I did. This is the cart. The cart, seriously, the wheel is this is a seaplane. And it doesn't have any wheels. And so if it's on land, it needs to sit on this cart like that so that it can be towed around. This is the machine gun that will not stay put. It's like the third time that I've cemented that, and it doesn't. Okay. And then this is the interior of the plane. This model's pretty cool because the fuselage, which I have trepidation about unmasking, just sits on top of this, and you can take it off and then see the inside. And the inside, as you can see, is quite detailed, in terms of not just the machine guns, but the fuel tank, the fuel filler, the cockpit itself. Okay, it has a pretty decent. The instrument panel came out pretty well. I even painted the instrument panel a different color wood than this. I wanted it to be mahogany. And Porco Rosso can come out, and then you can see the detail of the controls, the trim tabs, and the rudder pedals, and the control yoke, and the instrument panel, that sort of thing. And then Porco Rosso can very carefully be put back in there with his feet on the rudder pedals. And if all goes well, and you never know if it will or not, if all goes well, the fuselage top will actually go over the top of this without a problem. So these pieces are done. Done. And this is now done. This is the hatch. This hatch goes over here, right here, so you can reload the machine guns, including the one that just absolutely totally refuses to set right. And then this done piece goes over here, just like this. It's removable. It sets there, or vice versa. I forget which way it goes. The other way. There's little indentations here. That goes over the engine like this, and both of those covers, see how nicely they fit. It's good. I'm just going to leave them there, except that's not fitting there. It's to go underneath. Under. There's a little tab that has to go under. It was over. So those pieces go over. I'll just leave them off, so that the mechanic can access the engine for maintenance. So there, I have done some things, and so far it's coming out A minus work. It's looking pretty good, at least the inside stuff. So that's just to prove that things are done. Here. It is not perfect. If you look, you can still see where there was a fingerprint there. Okay. It is not perfect. And I'm going to put just another spritz of red paint on that, and then work on the floats. Just maybe, maybe it'll cover it up a little bit better. Another little spritz of red paint is not going to hurt, I do not believe. Hopefully that didn't hurt. And the last whatever million hours of this, I'm going to start painting the floats. At least outlining. Yeah, I'm just going to start on one. I've got about an hour left. It should be enough time to mess this up. Me too. Putting paints in my pocket for the redo, painting more white on here, redoing the red on here. Hi, Enforcer. It's been 2 steps forward, 1 step back, as usual. I did get a couple of little things done, some hatches that go over the engines. You just missed that. I showed you my done box, where the parts that were done. And I was just showing people that if that I have actually finished some things. Stuff is going okay. I've had some problems. Oh, well, you didn't miss it anyway then. Yeah, I've got, I have to redo some of the spray painting I did yesterday. And yesterday I had to redo some of the spray painting that I had done. I did it and then had to redo it. It just wasn't working. And I still have some issues that I'm trying to fix. So I'm terrible. I'm impossibly horrible with an airbrush, and I'm pretty bad with spray cans. Which means that, if I'm painting minifigs, it's really not too much of an issue because there aren't any large surface areas. They're all just little tiny spots. And so I can just put a little dab of paint on or something. But in the larger areas, like fuselages and wings and things, I need to spray it. And most modelers who have any kind of skill at all will always use an airbrush. I didn't and can't. So the spray cans, they have their own issues, and I managed to experience all of the things that are a downside of using spray can paint. Desert yellow always needs at least 2, sometimes 3 coats. I'm trying to get the edges here. Plan to use a different brush for this, but I didn't. I have to say that vision isn't the most, you kind of have to see where you're pointing it, but I'm not sure why I'm such a failure at airbrushing. I described this many times. I think it's always fun to describe just how awful it is. So that paint the red. The airbrush has this little reservoir of paint. Sometimes it's just a little cup that attaches. Sometimes it's just a little cup that attaches to the bottom of the aerator, where the airflow is. That's why it's called an airbrush. And sometimes it's a bottle that attaches. The first airbrush I had, actually got a second one for Nicole, who is much better at this sort of thing than I am. The first one, it just was held on by friction. And so I had this little glass bottle full of paint, right, that it's held on by friction to the this. It's just a little tube that inserts into a little socket, and you can imagine what happened is that as I was attempting to paint, the friction stopped frictionating, and it fell out. But it not only fell out, but it fell on a cement floor and broke. So one of my experiences with an airbrush was that yeah, that's really good to check in on a barbarian who's having a bad time. Even if you just leave a message saying, hey, I'm thinking of you, I hope you're doing okay. Just even that kind of thing can be really nice. Okay, I'm going to, shouldn't do this, but I partially clean this brush. Really making a mistake there. And then use this larger brush to paint the rest of the first coat. Yeah, so that was an early experience with an airbrush. Is this just the bottle held on by friction decided not to hold on by friction and fell on the floor. So I had broken glass, a big glob of, puddle of spilled paint. Just a disaster. You probably wouldn't be surprised to know that it happened more than once. The second time, it was with the airbrush cleaner that I was using to try to clean the paint out of the airbrush. The multiple coats. What? No, I'm holding this. And I did not think that through. Did not think that through. I need to clip this so I can set it in the holder. Oh, is she having a party? Or you just want to clean up for her because it's her birthday? Cleaning up is never as much fun as doing whatever it is that made you have to clean up in the first place. Okay. Are you baking it from scratch? Or are you using a mix? Alexis, who is our DM, bakes cakes from scratch, which is a lot of. She says it's not that much work, but I don't believe it. I think it's a lot of work. My mom always used a mix. growing up in the 50s and early 60s, that was the time when food stopped being just fresh food and started being stuff out of a box in a can. I can't say that that was true for everything, but things that were hard, like making a mix, a hummingbird cake. That's what Alexis says too, that it's really not that much harder than just using a mix. I have looked at the mix boxes. Okay. I think I've made a cake hardly ever, but used a mix, but you end up practically doing it from scratch anyway. Add milk, add egg, add this, add that. By the time you're done, the only thing that you haven't done is the flour, the dry ingredients, which are really, you're right, it's not that hard. You just put them in measuring cups and mix them. So what's is going to be shaped like a hummingbird, or is it a special kind of cake? So the pineapple and bananas, are those blended into the cake itself, or are they toppings? Is this something you've done before? Just coming along. It's really not too bad. I'll have to do this again to get the second coat on, but surprisingly, it's not awful. That's pretty ambitious. I mean, getting the texture of those right. Did you do them with all different flavors too? You know, I've always we started they started making them commercially, and there are stores that's all they do is they just sell macarons. We think we actually have one here around us, but I know we visited Chicago and they had them there, and I know in Europe you there are macaron stores, and that's all they sell, and they're really expensive. I mean, for a cookie, they're also really good, but I think the expense just represents the difficulty of making them and getting them right. Okay, so is that something that you could like do as a job somewhere? I guess you'd have to work at a specialized bakery. Here, there's a culinary school, for future chefs. I don't know if there's any place that specializes in pastry and baking. You want to have some real tasty stuff around. Having someone in the house who is skilled at that, that's pretty nice. Okay, I'm going to clean this off a bit. Oh, really? No, no, that's illegal. I mean, seriously, that is. And what difference does it make? As long as you get the recipes down. Okay, I'm saddened and offended by that. I really am. That is definitely not right, and I think it's illegal. I don't know what you can do about it, but if you have the skill and you can demonstrate it, that should be all that they care about. Of course, there's always the how do you prove it, right? Oh, doing so well. And then I got the usual brush in the wrong place thing. So is that something you might just keep trying to do? Yeah, right. It's the don't call back, and then you don't know anything. You know, you have no information to go on at all. Sorry to hear that. That can be pretty discouraging. Okay, well, so for a first coat, I'm saying that this is adequate. Keep working on the line. The real trick, I mean, this part is pretty straightforward. The real trick is going to be masking that so that the red paint doesn't get all over it. But now that I've done this, I've got some confidence that after I paint it red, the top of this red, that if red paint gets onto this, I'll be able to take the red paint off and keep a pretty nice line that looks a lot better than the decal would. I'm certain of that. Of course, as I rotate it, right? As I rotate it, I see flaws. Yeah, sometimes people in authority, even if there's nothing there, like there's no issue at all, just have to make an issue of something to throw their weight around. And I'm sorry that happened. Yeah, but you were the newbie, so you had to pay the price for it. Yeah, well, this will probably be okay. Yeah, it's like it doesn't matter if you're right or wrong. It's like I'm the boss. You lose. That happens too often, you know. And sometimes what you end up with is that the person who's wrong ends up getting their way, and then they just keep getting wrong again. They just keep getting it wrong. Sorry that happened. Of course, they could say that it wasn't because of your vision. They could say it was because you got into an argument, and so they had an excuse. Yeah, did that feel awkward, or was that okay? Sometimes it goes the other way too, in terms of it. But it can feel, I guess it can feel awkward if you're the only one of a certain category, right? That's unfortunate as well. I'm glad I've got a whole lot of these because I've been getting paint all over them, and I'm just going to put them in recycling when I'm done. Um, I'm going to take a look at the. Okay, for some reason there's just a lump there. I don't know what that's about. That's really annoying. Oh, there. Yeah, you were there a long time. That blemish is not going away, and I don't know what I can do about it. I didn't see it before. Like I need to do this one more time. Yeah, it's never going to get done. It was like a little bit of lint or something I got on there. Which there was. Fingerprint seems to be sort of under control, but now there's something else. Just something. I'm so tired of this. Well, this isn't going to get done today. I mean, that flaw was big enough to just really be significant. Now it's gone. I need to zap this with a little bit of red paint yet again. Never ending story here. Again, there's a little white spot that shows where I sanded it off because it's translucent paint. Well, now you can't see anything except the toothpick. Oh, I'm going to just do a recap here. Just reading here. Okay, so it got hit. Yeah, you have to start over to build your confidence. I don't know if that's a very good confidence builder, is it? To say, okay, you need to start over. Um, Yeah, I mean, it could be, especially if it's something you really enjoy doing. I can't, but trying to do something hands-on, like baking remotely. I mean, I can understand and probably appreciate how doing something like learning math, right, or reading a book and discussing it, you could do remotely. But baking, where you really want somebody there to be kind of hands-on and mentoring you, that sounds really difficult. So I'm so you had to do, yeah, you ended up having to redo some of the things you already did and then keep up. That must have really been difficult. At least they gave you the ingredients. They didn't make you go to the store and buy your own. I guess that's something. And then the chef was trying to assess your work based on pictures, which is difficult also, and maybe not fair. Who can tell? Um, I got a half hour left, and I'm really kind of stuck here. So let me go over what I've done. Is this got spray painted, but for some reason on the top and the bottom, there's some textural difference actually in the plastic itself, where it's showing. You can see it here and here, where you can actually see there is a textural difference. See that in the reflectivity? And it's on both sides. So it's not in the paint, it's just there. I don't understand it. So I'm not sure I can make that go away, but I'm going to try by repriming it, just repriming the whole thing and repainting it, which means a layer of prime and then 2 layers of red. And the results may end up looking just like this anyway, or it may work out. I've got the first coat of the desert yellow on these floats. I'm going to let those dry, and then I'll set them in the box here, and then I'll put a second, maybe a third coat on, and then mask the edges, I hope, and then spray paint the tops red, and then probably spend forever working on the edges. And this is why they gave us decals in the kit, these kind of yellowish decals to put on the insets, the bottom part of the pontoons, because getting it done with paint is, as you can see, is going to be quite a challenge. Well, I bet. I bet some of that stuff would really take a long time to bake completely. And of course, you were supposed to be doing this in the classroom, and now you had to do it in your own kitchen. So that probably was a difficult thing. I don't need this giant piece of cardboard for this, so I put it on a little piece. This big piece of cardboard later. This has to be repainted white. This needs very careful masking so I can start doing the stripes. Oh my. So you had 2 of you working at the same time trying to do 2 different things in a galley kitchen. I can imagine that was intense, very intense. I probably could put a second coat on yet before the end of the stream. But the problem is that when I get near the end of the stream, I start losing focus, and although this turned out to be pretty good, I just know that if I did it again today rather than waiting until Monday, it would be a disaster. I mean, not like a disaster. It would just be messy. I would get it onto where red needed to be, and then I'd have to sand it off. And and so on. So, um, oh my, oh, but I have to say that I've had homemade marshmallows. Okay. And if you've had homemade marshmallows, then store-bought marshmallows are no. Yeah, I know. I never, yeah, the gelatin, it's, well, we know what gelatin is. Yeah, they are amazing. The texture and the taste and everything are just amazing. I've not had them made in our kitchen. I've just had them, I've just eaten marshmallows that someone else had made, and they're not at all like the store bought marshmallows, which themselves are okay. You know, I'm kind of, I really like marshmallows and, and I have to admit, Peeps around this time of the year, I am a sucker for Peeps. But here's the thing, I don't know if you've done this, is, and it sounds kind of gross, but it's really good. Oh, yeah. Yep. In fact, my wife made some yesterday. We have but is only half a loaf left. But it just, fresh bread smells really good from the moment you start the yeast until it's baking, and when it's done, it's one of the best things. But marshmallows with a little bit of butter on it. There is absolutely nothing nutritiously good about that, really. I have to admit. But and some people in the family think that it's really disgusting. But I have to say, it really is. It's really good. Oh yeah, dinner rolls. Alexis makes dinner rolls for us for holidays. Oh yeah, cinnamon rolls. You have to have a lot of cinnamon, and it has to be good fresh cinnamon. Sometimes the stuff you get at the store has been sitting on shelves, and it's been oxidized, and it doesn't isn't quite as powerful and potent as the fresh powdered cinnamon. Yeah, no matter how full I am, I can probably eat a whole cinnamon roll. But that's a tip for everybody out there: is well, eggs. Yeah, they've gotten expensive again, haven't they? Like during the pandemic, I remember you couldn't get eggs hardly at all, and you're just naming all this stuff that's really, really amazingly good: cinnamon rolls, homemade dinner rolls, custard. Oh, you made a mousse. What kind of was it? The classic chocolate mousse. Getting the consistency of that is hard because there's a lot of air in it somehow. It has, and you can't. Well, if you're mixing the eggs into the mousse, they can curdle. So custards are difficult. What am I wanting to do here? What I'm really wanting to do is now the paint hasn't dried on the fuselage. I need to just let that sit there, um, and probably get back to it on Monday. I'll check it over the weekend. Yeah, the eggs will curdle, and then it's gross. Then it might have a fairly good flavor, but then you got all these little egg lumps all over the place, and it's not pleasant lumps like tapioca. Where you want those little round balls of a tapioca in a tapioca custard, but they're just like, no, it's not good. So custards are really hard. Temperature control, the mixing that has to go into it. I think I'm just going to go ahead and set these down. They hurt. They kind of sit on their edge. This is the not done box. Oh yeah, I mean if the eggs curdle, if they get cooked, there's no way you can go back and undo it. I've seen my wife try that with a custard. It just can't happen. And then you have to start all over again with fairly expensive ingredients. Yeah, the gas works really quickly. And then when you turn it off or take it off, the heat, it stops right away with electric. Most like coil based electric stoves, they just stay hot and it's hard to control the temperature of the pot. We just got a new one just last year because our old range it failed. Okay, let's just say it failed and it needed to be replaced. And we got this induction, the electric induction, which is interesting. It isn't a coil that heats up. It's an oscillating current that if you put a pot with a steel bottom on it, it heats the steel. So it actually, the burner, it isn't a burner. I mean, the surface doesn't really get that hot, but it makes the pot hot. And it's really responsive, just like gas. Okay. It heats things up really very nice and fast. And then when you turn it off or turn it down, the temperature changes just immediately, just like with a gas flame. So we're finding that works really well. People have talked about like banning gas stoves or something like that. And actually, we did have a gas one. The one that failed just started spewing fumes. It smelled really bad, and I think it was poisonous. It felt like it, so we had to get rid of it. Oh, that's pretty funny that the air current. Yeah, convection ovens are another thing. They cook faster and more evenly. I have to admit though that I have not learned how to use a convection oven properly. And I managed to burn some things a couple of times because the cook time is so much faster than it is with a regular oven, even though it's better. Alexis and Nicole, who are part of our Dyson Dungeons group, really like the convection oven and they prefer it. They use that all the time. But maybe it's just because I'm old and I can't. Yeah, you do have to have special pots for it. Not special pots, but you have to have a very flat steel bottomed uh, pot. It does work on stainless, but the best ones have like a sheet of. Okay, well that's it too. You have to. I think the best ones have like a stainless plating maybe on the outside of a steel plate. Mm, yeah, most of the stuff they make nowadays. So when we got the induction cook surface, actually most of the ones we had before still worked on. You can't use an aluminum pot. You can't do that. But the ones we had were stainless steel, and those seem to work okay. But then almost all of the new stuff that's made it works with an induction now because they become more common. But yeah, I mean, if you ever have to replace your stove like we did because it failed, it broke. I don't know what happened to it. Getting the induction, I had to be talked into it. It's like, why would we want that? It's not something used to, but it turned out to be a really good idea. Um, Well, I'm going to review what's going to happen on Monday. What's going to happen on Monday is that I am going to unmask the fuselage and do the touching up on the inside, and then doing the rim of the canopy. And I can't show it to you because it's over there. I've been trying to fix a flaw that I created by dropping it. It was painted nicely, and I dropped it, and it hit, and it got a little piece of dirt on it and a ding in one place and a fingerprint where I picked it up. And I've been trying to fix that so it looks okay, not as good as it did before I dropped it. This is a modeling tip. Okay. This is a modeling tip. No matter what skill level you're at, don't drop things if there's wet paint on them. Right? That's a pro tip. An absolute pro tip is that if you drop something with wet paint on it, it's not going to be good. And you're going to be spending a good deal of time sanding things out or removing paint and repainting, and not just don't. Okay. um, Olive oil cake. I have had olive oil cake, and surprisingly, it is good. You would think that with the flavor in the olive oil that it would kind of mess up the cake, but it works really well, and the consistency of the oil is really good. So yeah, cool. So the other thing is, if you do drop it, don't get impatient like I did and just pick it up. Think it through, look at how it's oriented on wherever it was, and try to pick it up in an unpainted area, because otherwise then you'll stick your finger into wet paint and it'll leave a fingerprint. And, you think that, well, but the ridges on your finger are deep enough to just leave ridges in the paint, and then you have to sand it all out and repaint it. So don't drop it. But if you do drop it, don't pick it up by sticking your fingers in wet paint. Try to find some other way of picking it up, and then hope that you didn't get dirt embedded in the wet paint all over the place from the floor where you dropped it. These are really high level, like skill 4 level tips that I'm passing on. Yeah, I believe that that's true. We don't often think, I mean, you go to the store nowadays and there's 15 different bottles of olive oil, which can get really confusing, and some of them are incredibly expensive. But I know a little bit about olive oil, uh, but most of that comes from just tasting different ones. The brand that we use, we actually found at a restaurant. Uh, they it was in a, they were serving bread with olive oil dip, right? And it was just really, really good. And we said, "What is it?" And they showed us the brand, and we've been using it since. Okay, so those are the pro tips. Don't drop something; it'll mess it up. You'll mess it up even more if you pick it up and stick your finger in the wet paint, and then it will take you an entire day to fix it. And if you're only doing modeling 3 hours a day, 3 days a week, it'll really make it take a lot longer. The other thing is that if you've got two parts that need to go together, it's a really good idea to paint them together, because this goes together with a piece under there, and now they're different colors of white, and this white has to match the other white, and it doesn't, and so that's a problem. So I'm not sure how this is going to go. I'm going to paint this again and see if I can fix it. And on Monday, sugar, peanut butter, egg. Oh yeah, you have to do the thing with on peanut butter cookies. You have to do the thing with the fork, right? The crisscross with, yeah. I don't know if that makes a difference or not, but it's not a real peanut butter cookie unless it's got the fork lines on it. Maybe it does make a huge difference, does it? Well, that is true. You use the fork to press them down to make them even, but it was probably an accident, right? People were using a fork to press them down so they're nice and even, and it just left these lines on it, and that became the tradition for peanut butter cookies. So on Monday, I'm going to unmask I'm pointing in that direction because that's where it's sitting. I'm going to unmask the top of the fuselage, touch up the inside where the red paint got in, because almost inevitably it did. Paint the little ring, the black ring around the cockpit. You can see it on the instructions here. There's this little ring there, just right there. That needs to be very, very carefully painted. Hopefully, I'll have this the same color as the other part of the vertical stabilizer, the rudder. This goes onto the vertical stabilizer. Hopefully, I'll have the whites matching. I'm going to rubber cement them together to hold them, and then I'm going to tape this so I can start painting the striping on it. I'm going to do the taping on the wings, the white wing tips, so that I can paint the red stripe on the end and the red in the center. Okay, leaving what will become green and white covered up. Thanks for joining in. Hope to see you on Monday, because I'm talking about what I'm going to try to do on Monday. Find out. So yeah, I'll be taping this and spray painting it Tuesday before the Wednesday stream, the red, and hopefully that will come out okay. Hopefully, because so far things haven't been coming out that well. And if it does, then I'll be able to tape over everything except this, which is going to be green, and then the wing will be done. That'll be pretty neat. And then maybe the vertical stabilizer will actually be done, because I'll be doing the same sort of thing to it. I'll be masking the front of it, painting the back of it red, and then masking that off, okay, here, and then painting the front of it green. And then there's a little bit of red on the bottom there, which will be a little tricky. So that will be on Monday. I'll be doing mainly unmasking, touching up, remasking, and then putting a second and maybe third, but definitely a second and maybe a third coat of this yellow, desert yellow, it's called. Okay, Cook's Illustrated. Nice. Second coat on here, on the bottoms of these floats, maybe a third. And then those will get ready for being taped to be spray painted red on the top. So that's what's coming up next week is, moving along. It'll be moving along. Once that's done, once the stripes are done, there's little bits of decals. Maybe I'll start working on those if I can find them. And it's really going to be down then to like putting on the canopy, the gun sight. This is already finished. Oh, the canopy, has to mask. You want to get these nice red lines on there, right? Just perfect, which means extremely careful masking, because if the paint gets on the part that's clear, getting that off without marring the clear surface, that's hard. It's hard to do. Oh, and I forgot about that. Okay. This is something I'm going to have to think about. On the bottom of the horizontal stabilizer, once that's attached, and it is all put together, these little struts go in, and each strut has to be put in exactly the right place, and each strut has to be painted red. And I haven't done that, and I need to keep the numbers right. Oh man. Okay, that's gonna just take some. I totally forgot about those. Totally forgot about those until I looked at the very, very last page and saw the struts. So, and then I have to do the whole spinner part. I might just start getting these prepped, in between, getting these pieces prepped, and just looking at what color they're supposed to be painted. Red, brown. Okay. The propellers. Okay, the propellers. I'm going to paint this to make it look like mahogany. I know how to do that. Yeah, just all these little pieces right near the end that I keep not remembering. Oh, yeah, and that too. So there's lots of little junk to do, lots of little pieces to be taken off and prepped and primed and painted. So what I'm going to try to remember to do is get these parts prepped and on Monday so that I can prime them on Tuesday off screen, and so I can paint them on Wednesday, and then they'll be ready for assembly. And eventually all this stuff will get done, and there will be an airplane at the end of it. But yeah. I was just going through the instructions and finding all this stuff that needed to be done that I had forgotten about. Most of it tiny, tiny little parts like the gun sight. Right, the gun sight is this little bit right there. Okay, that needs to come off of the sprue, and there will almost certainly be a mold mark ridge on it that needs to be sanded down. And I need to do that without losing it. There's plenty of opportunity for oopses the next week. And hopefully I'll be able to get the stripes painted and the big body parts ready to go. And then it's just all these little details like the propeller and the airspeed indicator and the canopy and stuff that I haven't thought about that I need to start working on next week. I'm going to guess that at the pace things are going, maybe 2 more weeks if I'm able to do this stream every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for the next 2 weeks, I might be able to get this really close to being done before I go away again. We'll see. But thanks everybody for joining in. Enforcer, thank you for talking about your experiences in culinary school and all your mouth-watering recipes like cakes and cinnamon rolls and custards. And yeah, now I'm hungry. I will probably go and have a very non-nutritious lunch as a result of this. But I'll see you all on Monday at about 10 o'clock, and hopefully we'll be able to make some good progress on this and not have to redo things. That's my hope. See you then. Have a good weekend.